Commander Zethkal stood on the bridge of the massive hegemony vessel Eternal Vigilance, watching the blue-green marble of Earth grow larger in the view screen. His four arms moved with practiced precision across the control interfaces, while his auxiliary sensory stalks monitored the dozens of tactical displays surrounding him. The planet looked peaceful from this distance, almost innocent in its beauty. But Zethkal knew better. The intelligence reports painted a grim picture of what lay beneath that serene atmosphere. Preliminary scans complete, Commander, reported his science officer, Vexthani, her crystalline form catching the light from the displays. Population confirmed at approximately 8 billion sentient beings. Technological level, primitive but progressing rapidly. They've achieved nuclear fission, basic spaceflight, and rudimentary quantum communications. Zethkal's mandibles clicked in what his species considered a gesture of concern. And the threat assessment? Severe, sir. They've already detonated nuclear weapons on their own planet. Multiple times. The radiation signatures we detected from the outer system weren't natural phenomena. They were testing these weapons on themselves. The commander's secondary arms gripped the railing of his command platform. In his 3 centuries of service with the galactic hegemony, he had encountered many species on the brink of self-destruction, but none quite like this. Most civilizations that developed nuclear technology either destroyed themselves within a few decades or learned to control their violent impulses. These humans had possessed such weapons for nearly a century and hadn't annihilated themselves yet, but they also hadn't stopped building them. What's our fleet status? Zethkal asked his tactical officer. 47 vessels in position, Commander. The humans' detection capabilities are limited. They've noticed some of our smaller scout ships, but they seem to believe we're natural phenomena. Their governments are actively suppressing information about our presence. This was standard procedure for the hegemony. When a species reached the nuclear threshold, they were given a choice: join the galactic community and submit to the peace accords, or be contained until they evolved beyond their violent tendencies. The humans, however, presented a unique challenge. They had been observed for decades now, and their behavior patterns were unlike anything in the hegemony's vast databases. Sir, Vexthani's voice carried a note of urgency. I'm detecting massive energy buildups across the planet. They're not natural. Zethkal moved to her station, his primary arms working the controls while his secondary pair clasped behind his back. The data flowing across the screens made his blood run cold. Nuclear weapons were being prepared for launch across multiple continents. Not just a few, but hundreds. They're not targeting us, the science officer continued, her crystalline body shifting through spectrum of colors that indicated deep analysis. They're targeting each other. The commander felt his throat sac inflate with stress hormones. This was exactly what the hegemony existed to prevent. Species destroying themselves in nuclear fire was a tragedy that had played out countless times across the galaxy. The humans were apparently just hours away from making the same mistake. Send word to the Council immediately, Zethkal ordered. We're implementing Emergency Protocol 7. Full planetary intervention. Within minutes, the hegemony fleet revealed itself to Earth. Massive ships, some larger than human cities, appeared in the skies above every major population center. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Nuclear weapons that had been minutes from launch were mysteriously deactivated. Military installations found their communications jammed and their weapons systems offline. Zethkal watched the human response with a mixture of relief and sadness. This was always the hardest part of first contact. The fear, the confusion, the desperate attempts to understand what was happening to them. But it was necessary. Better to traumatize a species than to let them burn their world to ash. Open planetary communications, he ordered. All frequencies, all languages. The translation matrix had been working on human languages for decades. The hegemony's message would be understood by every human on the planet simultaneously. People of Earth. Zethkal's voice resonated through every radio, television, and communication device on the planet. We are the galactic hegemony, representatives of over 10,000 civilized species across this galaxy. We come not as conquerors, but as protectors. Your species has reached a critical juncture in its development. You possess the power to destroy your world, and our observations indicate you were moments away from doing so." He paused, letting the translation matrix adjust to the various human languages and dialects. "We have temporarily disabled your weapons of mass destruction to prevent this tragedy. We have seen too many promising species destroy themselves in nuclear fire. We will not allow this to happen to Earth." The human response was immediate and chaotic. Panic spread through major cities as people pointed at the massive ships hanging in the sky like metal mountains. But Zethkal had expected this. Every species reacted with fear at first contact. It was natural. What was not natural was what happened next. Instead of cowering or attempting to negotiate, the humans did something that caught the hegemony completely off guard. They began to organize. Not their governments, who were indeed paralyzed with shock and terror, but the ordinary citizens. Within hours of the hegemony's announcement, human social networks were buzzing with activity. Scientists were sharing data about the alien ships. Engineers were analyzing the technology that had disabled their weapons. Military personnel were forming independent groups, separate from their official chains of command. "Commander," Vextani's voice was tight with concern. "We're detecting massive movement patterns across the planet. The humans aren't responding as predicted." Zethkal studied the tactical displays. Where he expected to see scattered panic and submission, he saw coordination on a scale that defied explanation. Humans were gathering in groups, sharing information, and, most disturbing of all, they were working on solutions. "What kind of solutions?" he asked. "They're reverse engineering our jamming technology. In less than 12 hours, they've figured out how we disabled their communications, and they're building countermeasures. Sir, some of these solutions are actually quite ingenious." The commander felt his stress sacks inflate further. This wasn't how intervention was supposed to work. Species were meant to be grateful for salvation, not immediately begin working to circumvent it. And their governments? Still in shock, mostly, but that doesn't seem a matter. The humans are organizing without them. They've established what they call citizen committees that are sharing information and resources across national boundaries. It's like they've decided their official leaders are irrelevant to this situation. Zethkal had never encountered anything like this in 3 centuries of service. When the hegemony intervened to save a species, the response was typically gratitude followed by submission. The humans seemed to be following a completely different script. "Sir," his tactical officer interrupted, "we're detecting energy buildups again, but not from their old weapons systems." "What kind of energy buildups?" "Unknown configuration. They're using their power grids in ways we've never seen before. It's like they're turning their entire electrical infrastructure into some kind of massive device." The commander moved to the tactical station, his 4 arms working frantically across the controls. What he saw made his primary heart skip several beats. The humans hadn't just figured out how the hegemony's jamming worked. They were preparing to turn the tables. "They're building a planet-wide electromagnetic pulse generator," he whispered, his voice tight with disbelief. "Using their own power grid as the framework." "That's impossible," Vexthani protested. "The coordination required, the engineering challenges, the sheer audacity. No species attempts something like that during first contact." But the evidence was undeniable. Across Earth, humans were working in unprecedented coordination to transform their planet into a weapon. Not a weapon to destroy themselves, but a weapon to strike back at their would-be protectors. "How long until they can activate it?" Zethkal asked. His tactical officer's skin shifted through several colors indicating extreme stress. "At their current rate of progress, 18 hours, sir. Maybe less." The commander found himself facing a situation not covered in any hegemony protocol. They had come to save the humans from themselves, and instead, the humans were preparing to defend themselves from their saviors. "Sir," his communications officer announced, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's being broadcast on all frequencies simultaneously. They've broken through our jamming. Put it through." The voice that emerged from the speakers was calm, measured, and carried an undertone of steel that made Zethkal's auxiliary sensory stalks twitch with unease. Attention galactic hegemony vessels. This is Dr. Sarah Chun, speaking on behalf of the United Earth Defense Coalition. We thank you for your concern regarding our nuclear weapons. However, we must respectfully decline your protection. Zethkal's mandibles clicked in confusion. Coalition. What coalition? We understand that you believe you are acting in our best interests, the human voice continued. But we have not asked for your intervention, and we do not consent to the occupation of our world. You have 18 hours to withdraw your vessels from Earth space. If you do not comply, we will be forced to take defensive action. The bridge of the eternal vigilance fell silent except for the hum of equipment. In 3 centuries of intervention missions, Zethkal had never received an ultimatum from the species he was trying to save. Sir, Vexthani said quietly, I'm detecting similar transmission from multiple points across the planet. This Dr. Chen isn't speaking for just one nation or government. The humans have somehow unified their response in less than 24 hours. Zethkal stared at the tactical display showing Earth. The planet that had seemed so peaceful from a distance was revealing itself to be something far more complex and dangerous than he had imagined. The humans weren't just refusing salvation. They were preparing to fight for the right to determine their own destiny. Give me a direct line to the Hegemony Council, he ordered. Priority 1. As he waited for the connection, Zethkal found himself wondering if perhaps the Hegemony had made a fundamental error in their assessment of humanity. They had assumed the humans were on the verge of self-destruction, but what if they were wrong? What if the humans were something else entirely? The thought that was beginning to form in his mind was one that would have been considered heretical by hegemony standards. What if some species were meant to be left alone, regardless of how dangerous they appear to be? But before he could explore that thought further, his communications officer announced that the council was ready to receive his report. Zethkal straightened his posture and prepared to deliver news that would shake the very foundations of hegemony policy. The humans weren't grateful for salvation. They were preparing for war. And somehow, despite having known them for less than a day, Zethkal was beginning to suspect that might be exactly what made them remarkable. The Hegemony Council chamber was a marvel of engineering that spanned 3 kilometers in diameter and housed representatives from over 10,000 species. When Zethkal's emergency transmission reached them, the vast space fell silent for the first time in recorded history. Even the perpetually chattering Vex Minimites ceased their constant background noise. High Counselor Morthek, an ancient being whose species had achieved spaceflight when the galaxy was young, absorbed the report with growing disbelief. His massive form, more energy than matter after millennia of evolution, pulsed with colors that indicated deep concern. Repeat your assessment, Commander. Morthek's voice resonated through quantum fields rather than air. Are you reporting that the humans have rejected our protection and are preparing for armed resistance? Zethkal's image flickered in the holographic display at the center of the chamber. Affirmative, High Counselor. Not only have they unified their response across the entire planet in less than 30 hours, but they've begun construction of a planetary defense system that our tactical analysts describe as impressively crude but potentially effective. Counselor Yex Prime, representing the militant Krex Dominion, leaned forward with obvious interest. His armored carapace gleamed under the chamber's lights. Define potentially effective, Commander. They've weaponized their electrical grid, sir. Every power plant, transmission line, and distribution node on the planet has been modified to function as components in a massive electromagnetic pulse generator. If activated, it would disable every piece of hegemony technology within several thousand kilometers of the planet. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of sounds as representatives from thousands of species attempted to speak at once. Some clicked, others buzzed, a few communicated through controlled chemical releases, and many simply projected their thoughts directly. The translation matrix worked overtime to convert this chaos into comprehensible debate. Impossible, declared Counselor Vashtal of the Silicon Confederacy. No species develops planetary-scale defensive technology during first contact. The psychological trauma alone should prevent any coordinated response. Clearly, the humans are an exception, responded Counselor Zenka of the Peaceful Unity. Perhaps we should reconsider our approach. Or perhaps we should demonstrate why they shouldn't resist us. Yex Prime interjected, his secondary arms manipulating weapons displays that materialized around his position. High Counselor Morthek raised one massive appendage, and the chamber fell silent. Commander Zethkal, provide details on this human coalition. How have they achieved such rapid coordination? Zethkal's image shifted as he consulted his data displays. That's perhaps the most remarkable aspect of their response. High Counselor, they haven't relied on their existing governmental structures at all. Instead, they've created what they call mesh networks using their global communication systems. Every human with access to their information networks has become a node in a planet-wide decision-making process. That's chaotic, observed Counselor Meltitress, whose species prized order above all else. How do they reach consensus? They don't, sir. They argue constantly, debate every decision, and somehow still manage to coordinate massive engineering projects in real time. Our analysts estimate they're having over 50 million simultaneous discussions about their response to our presence, yet they're all working toward the same goal. Counselor Rixmond, representing the Hive Unity, buzzed with confusion. This makes no sense. Effective coordination requires a central authority, a queen mind to direct the collective effort. How can billions of independent consciousnesses work together without leadership? Zethkal was quiet for a moment before responding. With respect, Counselor, I don't think we understand how they work. Our xenopsychologists have been studying the human communication patterns, and they've concluded that humans seem to function as a collective intelligence that somehow maintains individual autonomy. It's unlike anything in our databases. High Counselor Morthek pulsed through several colors before settling on a deep blue that indicated deep contemplation. Show us these humans, Commander. Let the Council see what we're dealing with. The holographic display shifted to show feeds from various points across Earth. The Council watched in fascination as humans swarmed across massive construction sites, transforming electrical substations and power plants with remarkable efficiency. But it wasn't the construction that held their attention. It was the humans themselves. Notice how they work, Zethkal narrated. No apparent hierarchy, no central command structure, yet every action serves the larger goal. They argue, they disagree, sometimes they even fight with each other, but they never stop working together. The display showed a group of human engineers arguing passionately about the design of a power coupling while their hands continued to work on the installation. Their disagreement was heated, almost violent in its intensity, yet they were simultaneously collaborating on the very thing they were arguing about. They're arguing and cooperating at the same time, whispered Counselor Zenka. How is that possible? Our behavioral analysts believe it's a fundamental aspect of their psychology, Zethkal explained. They seem to use conflict as a tool for problem-solving rather than as an obstacle to cooperation. They generate solutions by fighting about them. Counselor Yexprime's weapons displays flickered with agitation. This is all irrelevant. They're a primitive species that's refusing our protection. Standard protocol demands that we implement pacification measures until they accept our guidance. Standard protocol assumes the species wants to be saved, Morthek replied. These humans seem to prefer the risk of self-destruction to the certainty of our protection. Then, they're suicidal and should be treated accordingly, Yex Prime snapped. We've dealt with death cults before. They don't appear to be suicidal, Zethkal interjected. Quite the opposite, actually. Our psychological profiles indicate an almost pathological determination to survive. They're not rejecting our protection because they want to die. They're rejecting it because they want to live on their own terms. The chamber fell silent again as the implications of this statement settled in. For 10,000 years, the hegemony had operated under the assumption that all intelligent species would choose safety over freedom, protection over independence. The humans were challenging that fundamental assumption. High Counselor, Counselor Meltitress spoke carefully. If the humans prefer independence to safety, and if they're willing to fight for that preference, perhaps we should respect their choice. Absolutely not, Yex Prime declared. The moment we allow one species to refuse our protection, others will follow. The hegemony exists to prevent galactic catastrophe. We cannot allow sentiment to override our duty. But what if our protection isn't actually protection? Counselor Zenka asked quietly. What if we're the catastrophe we're trying to prevent? The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. No one spoke for several minutes as the implications were considered. Finally, High Counselor Morthek addressed the chamber. Commander Zethkal, what is your assessment of human technological capabilities? If we were to withdraw, what is the probability of them destroying themselves? Zethkal was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, High Counselor, I'm no longer certain they would. Yes, they have nuclear weapons. Yes, they've used it before. But they've also had them for nearly a century without ending their civilization. And their response to our arrival suggests a level of coordination and strategic thinking that contradicts our assumption about their self-destructive tendencies. Explain. They haven't used their nuclear weapons against us, sir. They're not trying to destroy our ships or attack our personnel. They're building a defensive system specifically designed to disable our technology without causing casualties. Even in their resistance, they're showing restraint. Counselor Rixmond buzzed with agitation. You're suggesting they're more civilized than our assessment indicated? I'm suggesting they're different than our assessment indicated. They may be the first species we've encountered that views survival and freedom as the same thing rather than conflicting goals. High Counselor Morthek cycled through several colors before speaking. The humans have given us 18 hours to withdraw. How much time remains? 14 hours, High Counselor. And their defensive system will be operational in approximately 10 hours, sir. Possibly sooner. The High Counselor's form pulsed with what appeared to be amusement. So they've given us more time than they need. They're not threatening us. They're offering us a graceful way to leave. That's an interesting interpretation, admitted Counselor Yex Prime, his aggressive posture softening slightly. Commander, Morthek continued. Open a direct communication channel with this Dr. Chun. The Council wishes to speak with the humans directly. Within minutes, the massive display at the center of the chamber showed a simple conference room somewhere on Earth. Dr. Sarah Chun sat at a table with several other humans, looking remarkably calm for someone facing representatives of a galactic civilization. Honorable members of the Galactic Hegemony Council, Dr. Chun spoke with quiet confidence. Thank you for agreeing to speak with us directly. High Counselor Morthek's energy form coalesced into something approaching a recognizable shape. Dr. Chun, we are puzzled by your species' response to our intervention. We came to protect you from self-destruction. Why do you resist our help? Dr. Chun smiled, and somehow that simple expression carried more weight than all the weapons displays the Council had been reviewing. With respect, High Counselor, you didn't come to help us. You came to control us. You disabled our weapons, jammed our communications, and told us you were taking over our protection without asking what we wanted. Because what you wanted was irrelevant if you were about to destroy yourselves. Counselor Yex Prime interjected. But we weren't about to destroy ourselves, another human, introduced as General Rodriguez, replied. Yes, we had nuclear weapons prepared for launch. But they weren't targeting population centers. They were targeting uninhabited areas to create electromagnetic pulses that would disable what we assumed were invasion craft. The Council chamber fell silent. After a moment, Counselor Rixmond buzzed quietly. You were preparing to defend yourselves from us from the moment we arrived? We've been preparing to defend ourselves from someone like you for decades, Dr. Chin confirmed. We always assumed that any species advanced enough for interstellar travel would view us as either a resource to be exploited or a threat to be contained. We've been ready. High Counselor Morthek pulsed through several colors. You assumed we were hostile. We assumed you were paternalistic, Dr. Chin corrected, which, from our perspective, amounts to the same thing. You may have the best intentions, but you're still trying to impose your will on us without our consent. That's not protection, that's conquest. But surely you understand that we have experience with thousands of species, Counselor Mel HFY argued. We know what works, what leads to peace and prosperity. Dr. Chun leaned forward slightly. What works for other species? But we're not other species. We're human. And being human means choosing our own path, even if it leads to failure. Even if it leads to extinction. The X-Prime demanded. Even then, General Rodriguez confirmed. Freedom includes the freedom to make fatal mistakes. If you take that away, what's left isn't life, it's existence. The council chamber was quiet for a long time. Finally, High Counselor Morthex spoke. And if we withdraw? If we leave you to your own devices? What then? Dr. Chin's smile returned, broader this time. Then, we'll probably surprise you. Humans have a talent for that. You're asking us to gamble an entire world on your species' good judgment, Counselor Zenka observed. No, Dr. Chin replied. We're telling you that we're going to gamble our entire world on our species' good judgment, regardless of what you do. The only question is whether you're going to respect our right to make that choice. As the implications of the human position settled over the council, Morthek realized they were facing something unprecedented in hegemony history, a species that valued self-determination more than survival itself, and somehow that made them seem more likely to survive, not less. The council had come to Earth expecting to save a dying civilization. Instead, they had found something that might save them all from the comfortable tyranny of good intentions. The debate in the Hegemony Council continued for hours after the communication with Dr. Chen ended. Representatives argued across species lines, their various forms of expression creating a symphony of disagreement that the chamber's acoustic dampeners struggled to contain. Counselor Yex Prime, his armored form bristling with defensive spines, projected a tactical display that filled half the chamber's space. Look at their military preparations, he insisted. These humans have been planning for interstellar war for decades. They have underground facilities, distributed command structures, and weapons systems we're only beginning to understand. They're not peaceful. They're preparing for conquest. Or they're preparing for survival, Counselor Zenka countered, her melodic voice carrying harmonics that suggested deep contemplation. Perhaps their military preparations are simply prudent planning for contact with unknown species. After all, they had no way of knowing our intentions were benevolent. High Counselor Morthek's energy form pulsed thoughtfully. Commander Zethkal, what is your assessment of human military capability? The commander's image flickered as he consulted real-time data from his fleet. Formidable but limited, High Counselor. They lack faster-than-light travel, exotic matter manipulation, and energy shielding. However, their defensive strategies are creative. They've turned their entire planet into a fortress without us realizing it. Explain. Every major city has underground tunnel systems that connect to hardened command centers. Their internet infrastructure includes hidden military networks that can function independently of civilian systems. They've distributed their manufacturing capability across thousands of small facilities rather than concentrating it in vulnerable locations. It's like they've been preparing for asymmetric warfare against a technologically superior opponent. Considère Rix Mondes mandible cliqued nervously. That suggests they expected to be attacked, not protected. Or it suggests they understood that protection and attack can be the same thing, depending on perspective, Morthek observed. The debate continued, but it was interrupted by an urgent alert from Zethkal's fleet. High Counselor, we're detecting massive energy buildups across Earth. The humans are activating their planetary defense system ahead of schedule. Are they attacking? Yex Prime demanded, his weapons systems coming online automatically. Negative, sir. They are demonstrating. The Council's central display shifted to show Earth from space. Across the night side of the planet, aurora-like patterns began to dance through the atmosphere. But these weren't natural phenomena. They were controlled, deliberate, and beautiful. What are they doing? Melty Choices asked, her ordered mind struggling to categorize what she was seeing. They're showing us what their weapon looks like when it's not being used as a weapon, Zethkal replied, wonder evident in his voice. They've turned their electromagnetic pulse generator into the largest light display in their planet's history. Every human on the night side can see it. The display zoomed in to show crowds of humans standing in the streets, pointing at the sky and celebrating. Children were laughing, adults were cheering, and across social media networks, humans were sharing images and videos of their planet's aurora crown. They've weaponized their atmosphere and turned it into a festival, Morthek mused. Remarkable. It's more than that, Zethkal continued. Our sensors indicate they could shift from this display mode to full defensive activation in under 30 seconds. They're showing us their capabilities while simultaneously demonstrating restraint. And sending a message, added Counselor Zenka. They're telling us that they prefer celebration to warfare, but they're prepared for either. Dr. Chen's voice suddenly filled the chamber as Earth opened another communication channel. Honorable Council members, we hope you're enjoying our little light show. We wanted to demonstrate something important before your deadline expires. And what is that, Dr. Chun? Mortek responded. That humans don't build weapons. We build tools that can be used as weapons if necessary. This same system that could disable your technology is also providing free power to our entire electrical grid, creating the most spectacular natural light show our planet has ever seen, and serving as a communication network that connects every human on Earth in real time. The implications hit the Council like a gravity wave. The humans hadn't built a weapon system at all. They had built an infrastructure improvement that happened to have defensive capabilities. Dr. Chun, Counselor Mel THSS spoke carefully. Are you saying this defensive system serves multiple purposes? Everything humans build serves multiple purposes, Counselor. That's how we think. Our cities are simultaneously homes, workplaces, cultural centers, and potential fortresses. Our communication networks carry entertainment, commerce, education, and military coordination. Our space program is about exploration, science, resource acquisition, and, yes, eventual defense against threats from space. Including threats like us, Yex Prime observed. Including opportunities like you, Dr. Chen corrected. The same systems we've built to defend against hostile contact are the ones we'll use to facilitate peaceful contact. It all depends on what kind of neighbors you turn out to be. General Rodriguez's voice joined the conversation. Council members, we'd like to make you an offer. What kind of offer? Morthek asked. Stay and observe. Not as protectors or conquerors, but as guests. Watch how we handle our problems. See how we resolve conflicts. Learn what humans are actually like when we're not being threatened or patronized. The council chamber erupted in discussion again. The concept of simply observing without intervening was alien to hegemony philosophy. And if you destroy yourselves while we watch, demanded Yex Prime, then you'll have learned something important about the limits of intervention, General Rodriguez replied. But if we don't destroy ourselves, you'll have learned something even more important about the value of self-determination. How long would this observation period last? Asked Counselor Rixmont. As long as you want, Dr. Chen answered. Years, decades, centuries. We're not going anywhere, and neither, apparently, are you. Instead of forcing a confrontation that benefits no one, why not turn this into the galaxy's longest case study? Zethkal's voice cut through the discussion. High Counselor, I should mention that the human proposal has merit from a strategic standpoint. Our intervention protocols are based on statistical models derived from thousands of species, but those models have never been tested against a species that refused intervention. The humans are offering us a chance to observe an uncontrolled experiment. An experiment that could end in planetary extinction, Yex Prime pointed out. Or could end in something we've never seen before, Zenka countered. A species that achieves stability and prosperity without sacrificing independence. High Counselor Morthek pulsed through several colors before settling on a deep gold that indicated decision-making mode. Dr. Chun, what guarantees do we have that your species won't use the time we're observing to develop weapons capable of threatening other worlds? Dr. Chin was quiet for a moment before responding. The same guarantee you have that we won't develop those weapons if you try to control us. None. The difference is that if you respect our autonomy, we'll have no reason to view the galaxy as hostile territory that needs to be conquered for our protection. You're asking us to trust you, Mel THYSS observed. We're asking you to trust yourselves, General Rodriguez replied. Trust that your thousands of years of experience and wisdom have given you the ability to recognize a genuine threat when you see one. And trust that if we were actually planning galactic conquest, we would have started by pretending to be grateful for your protection instead of building planetary defenses. The logic was sound, and it hit the Council with uncomfortable force. A species planning deception would have been more deceptive. The humans' immediate and transparent resistance was actually evidence of their honesty. There's another consideration, Zethkal added. Our presence here has already changed human development. They've unified their planet's response in under 48 hours, something our models predicted would take them decades to achieve. They're progressing faster under pressure than they would have naturally, meaning our intervention might be causing the very outcome we're trying to prevent, Morthek mused. Or it might be accelerating the outcome we're trying to encourage, Yex Prime admitted grudgingly. If conflict drives their innovation, perhaps the threat of our control is actually helping them develop better coordination mechanisms. Dr. Chen's voice carried a note of amusement. Council members, we should mention that your discussion is being broadcast live across our planet. Your debate about whether to trust us is being watched by 8 billion humans simultaneously. The chamber fell silent. You're sharing our deliberations with your entire population? Rixmond asked. Of course. This decision affects every human alive and every human who will ever live. They have a right to know how it's being made. In fact, they're providing input in real time through our networks. What kind of input? Morthek asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Mostly they're impressed by your thoughtfulness and concerned about Counselor Yex Prime's weapons displays, General Rodriguez replied with dry humor. But they're also making suggestions for how this observation period could work. They've proposed joint scientific projects, cultural exchange programs, and collaborative space exploration initiatives. They're planning our relationship while we're still deciding whether to have one, Zinka observed with what sounded like admiration. That's very human, Dr. Chen confirmed. We tend to assume the best possible outcome and work backward from there. Counselor Yex Prime's aggressive posture began to soften. And if the best possible outcome doesn't occur, then we adapt and work toward the next best possible outcome. We're remarkably good at adaptation, Counselor. It's how we've survived this long on a planet that's tried to kill us with ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, and dozens of other natural disasters. High Counselor Morthek cycled through every color in his spectrum before speaking. Dr. Chun, General Rodriguez, the Council will consider your proposal. But we must ask, what happens if, after observing your species, we determine that you do pose a threat to galactic stability? Dr. Chen's response was immediate and carried the weight of absolute certainty. Then, we'll prove you wrong. The simple confidence in that statement reverberated through the council chamber. Here was a species that didn't just believe in itself. It was willing to stake its existence on that belief. Very well, Morthek announced. The Hegemony Council accepts your proposal. We will observe rather than intervene for a period to be determined by the evidence of your development. Across Earth, 8 billion humans celebrated simultaneously. The aurora display intensified, turning the entire night sky into a canvas of moving light that could be seen from the Hegemony ships. But in the council chamber, a sobering realization was beginning to take hold. They had come to Earth to save humanity from itself. Instead, they were beginning to suspect that humanity might be about to save the galaxy from the Hegemony's well-intentioned tyranny. The test was about to begin, but nobody was quite sure anymore who was testing whom. 0.5 years had passed since the Hegemony Council agreed to observe rather than intervene on Earth. What began as a reluctant compromise had evolved into something unprecedented in galactic history. The most comprehensive study of an uncontrolled sapient species ever conducted. Commander Zethkal, now bearing the title of Chief Observer, stood in his expanded research facility orbiting Earth's moon. The station had grown from a simple outpost to a massive complex housing scientists, diplomats, and observers from hundreds of hegemony species. What had started as a military intervention had become the galaxy's most important anthropological project. Daily Report Commander announced his aide, a young crystalline named Kexthani, daughter of his former science officer. She had been born during the observation period and had never known a galaxy where humans weren't a subject of intense fascination and debate. "Proceed," Zethkal replied, settling into his command chair. 5 years of watching humans had taught him to expect the unexpected, but they still managed to surprise him daily. Global conflict resolution is up 300% compared to their historical averages, Kexthani reported. The humans have resolved territorial disputes, resource conflicts, and ideological disagreements at a rate our models considered impossible. However, they've also started 47 new categories of argument that didn't exist before first contact, such as whether artificial intelligence should have voting rights, how to handle genetic enhancement regulations, what constitutes fair trade with hypothetical alien species, and the ethics of terraforming uninhabited worlds. They're arguing about problems they don't even have yet. Zethkal's mandibles clicked in what had become his characteristic expression of bemused admiration. And their technological development, accelerating beyond all projections. They've achieved controlled fusion, established permanent colonies on their moon and Mars, developed quantum communication networks, and begun construction of their first faster-than-light capable vessels. All in 5 years, Commander. Most species take centuries to accomplish what they've done in half a decade. Any signs of the aggressive expansion patterns we were concerned about? Kexthani's crystalline form shifted to a color indicating puzzlement. That's the anomaly, sir. Their expansion is remarkably considerate. They're terraforming dead worlds instead of claiming inhabited ones. They're broadcasting their presence and intentions openly, and they've established protocols for contact with new species that are more comprehensive than our own first contact procedures. The commander studied the displays showing human activity across their solar system. Mars glowed with the lights of thriving cities protected under atmospheric domes. The asteroid belt buzzed with mining operations that were simultaneously harvesting resources and conducting xenoarchaeology surveys, searching for signs of ancient life. Most remarkably, Earth itself had become cleaner, more organized, and more peaceful than it had been at first contact. "Sir," Kexthani continued, "there's something else. The humans have been requesting formal diplomatic contact for the past year. Not just with our observation team, but with the full Hegemony Council. For what purpose? They want to propose membership." Zethkal's 4 arms froze simultaneously. In his 3.5 centuries of service, no species had ever requested hegemony membership. The hegemony offered membership to species that demonstrated sufficient development and peaceful intent. Species didn't apply, they were invited. Explain. According to Dr. Chun, who's now the Human Secretary General of Earth's unified government, they believe they've demonstrated the qualities necessary for galactic citizenship. They've eliminated large-scale warfare, developed sustainable technology, begun responsible expansion beyond their homeworld, and established functional diplomatic protocols. They want to contribute to galactic stability rather than simply being observed. The implications hit Zethkal like a gravity wave. The humans weren't content to simply prove they weren't a threat. They wanted to become part of the solution to galactic problems. "Give me a connection to the Council," he ordered. Priority 1. Within moments, the familiar chaos of the Hegemony Council chamber filled his display. But the composition had changed over the past 5 years. Representatives who had been hostile to the Human Observation Project had been replaced by others more interested in the results. The entire galaxy had been watching Earth, and the conclusions being drawn were revolutionary. High Counselor Morthek's energy form had evolved during the observation period, becoming more complex and displaying new color patterns that observers attributed to the intellectual stimulation of the human study. "Commander Zethkal, we've been expecting your report. The humans have made their membership request through multiple channels. They've also sent applications to 17 individual species councils, 42 trade confederations, and every major research institution in the galaxy, added Counselor Zenka, whose melodic voice now carried harmonics that hadn't existed before her species began studying human music. They're not just asking to join the hegemony. They're introducing themselves to everyone. And the response? Zethkal asked. Unprecedented, admitted Counselor Yex Prime. The former militants' weapons displays have been replaced by sociological analysis charts. 600 species have requested permission to establish direct contact with Earth. 3,000 research institutions want to study human problem-solving methodologies. And 41 species have applied to relocate populations to Earth to experience what they're calling the human development model. Zethkal found himself struggling to process the information. Species want to move to Earth. Not all of them. Counselor Rixmon buzzed with what seemed to be amusement. But enough to make it significant. They've observed how rapidly humans progress under pressure and want to experience that acceleration themselves. The humans have agreed to these relocations? Zethkal asked. More than agreed. Counselor Meltitris replied, her ordered mind clearly fascinated by the chaotic efficiency she'd observed. They've established integration protocols, cultural exchange programs, and collaborative research initiatives. They're treating their planet as a laboratory for interspecies cooperation. High Counselor Morthek pulsed through several new colors before speaking. Commander, what is your assessment of a human membership application? Zethkal was quiet for a long moment, considering everything he'd observed over 5 years. High Counselor, I believe the question isn't whether humans are ready for hegemony membership. The question is whether the hegemony is ready for humans. Explain. They don't just solve problems, sir, they redefine them. They don't just adapt to challenges. They transform challenges into opportunities. They don't just cooperate with other species. They inspire other species to cooperate better with each other. They've spent 5 years proving that our fundamental assumptions about species development might be wrong. Wrong how? Demanded Yex Prime. We assumed that species needed protection from their own destructive impulses until they evolved beyond them. The humans have demonstrated that destructive impulses can be channeled into constructive innovation if a species has the right cultural framework. They haven't eliminated conflict. They've weaponized it against problems instead of each other. The council chamber was unusually quiet as representatives absorbed this assessment. Are you recommending we approve their membership application? Morthek asked. I'm recommending we do more than that, Zethkal replied. I'm recommending we restructure our entire intervention philosophy based on what we've learned from observing them. That's a significant recommendation, Counselor Zenka observed. It's a necessary one. In 5 years of observation, we've watched the humans solve problems we didn't even know were solvable. They've developed technologies we hadn't imagined, resolved conflicts we considered permanent, and established forms of cooperation we thought were impossible. Most importantly, they've done it all while maintaining their individual autonomy and cultural diversity. Kekstani's voice interrupted from the observation station. Sir, we're receiving another communication from Earth. They're requesting permission to address the Council directly. Put them through, Morthek commanded. Dr. Chun appeared in the chamber's display, but she was no longer alone. Representatives from dozens of human nations, cultures, and colonies sat around a massive curved table. Behind them, screens showed humans working alongside members of various alien species who had been permitted to establish research outposts on Earth. Honorable Council members, Dr. Chen began. We want to thank you for 5 years of patient observation and for the opportunity to demonstrate our commitment to peaceful development. Dr. Chun, Morthek replied, your species' progress has been remarkable. But we must ask, what do you hope to achieve through hegemony membership? Dr. Chun smiled, and Zethkal realized that expression had become one of his favorite aspects of human communication. High Counselor, we don't want to achieve anything through membership. We want to help the hegemony achieve something through our membership. And what is that? A better galaxy, answered General Rodriguez, now bearing the title of Minister of Interstellar Relations. We spent 5 years studying not just how to solve our own problems, but how to help other species solve theirs. We want to share what we've learned, such as, prompted Counselor Rixmond. A new human voice joined the conversation, Dr. Kim Patel, introduced as Director of Xenosociological Research. We've developed protocols for accelerated species development that don't require the surrender of autonomy. We've created conflict resolution mechanisms that work across different forms of consciousness. We've established trade frameworks that ensure mutual benefit rather than exploitation. And we've designed exploration methodologies that prevent the problems intervention was created to solve. You're offering to help us help other species more effectively, Mel THYSS said, her voice carrying a note of wonder. We're offering to help you eliminate the need for intervention entirely, Dr. Chen corrected. Imagine a galaxy where species don't need to be saved from themselves because they've been given the tools to save themselves. The implications cascaded through the council chamber like a tsunami. The humans weren't just asking to join the hegemony. They were offering to revolutionize it. High Counselor Morthek cycled through his entire spectrum before settling on a color that observers later described as representing profound realization. Dr. Chun, 5 years ago, we came to Earth to protect your species from self-destruction. We believed you were on the verge of nuclear annihilation and needed our intervention to survive. We know, Dr. Chun replied gently, and we want you to know that your concern was touching, misguided but genuine. You cared enough about strangers to risk your own safety to protect them. That's admirable. But we were wrong about you, Morthek continued. You were wrong about yourselves, Dr. Chun corrected. You created the hegemony because you believed the galaxy needed protection from chaos. But what the galaxy actually needs is coordination, not control. You've been solving the right problem with the wrong solution. And humans represent the right solution? X Prime asked. Humans represent proof that the right solution is possible, General Rodriguez replied. We're not perfect, and we're not proposing that other species become like us. We're proposing that all species be allowed to become the best versions of themselves. The council chamber was silent for a long time. Finally, Morthek spoke. Dr. Chun, the Hegemony Council unanimously approves Earth's application for membership. But more than that, we want to propose something unprecedented. We're listening, Dr. Chun replied. We want to establish Earth as the headquarters for a new division of the hegemony, the Department of Species Development. Instead of intervening to prevent destruction, you would help species develop the tools to prevent their own destruction. Dr. Chen's smile broadened. We accept, but we have one condition. What condition? That the first species we work with is the hegemony itself. You've spent 10,000 years protecting the galaxy from chaos. It's time someone helped you learn to trust the galaxy to protect itself. As the implications of this proposal settled over the council, Zethkal realized that the humans had accomplished something unprecedented. They had been observed, tested, and judged, and in the process they had observed, tested, and judged their observers. The hegemony had come to Earth to save humanity from itself. Instead, humanity had saved the hegemony from the comfortable tyranny of good intentions. The galaxy would never be the same, and that, Zethkal reflected as he watched the first joint human hegemony development teams prepare for deployment, was exactly what the galaxy needed.